Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of What a Hell of a Way to Die. It is me, it is Nate, it is 420. Happy 420 to you, Nate, and all of the marijuana smokers out there. Congratulations on
Everyone should
having
blaze it. Yeah.
congratulations everybody for having this day to celebrate your high holy days. I remember in high school, all of us walking around wishing each other happy holidays on this day. We thought we were funny. We weren't, but you know, it was just our thing. So happy holidays to all of the burnouts and the potheads out there.
Yeah. Happy holidays, friends. Let's just say it's there's a part of me that's like, damn, it's great to smoke weed when there's such a pandemic going on that you want to relax yourself. But there's another part of me that's like, well, A, it may not necessarily be good for your lungs given the risks, and B, in my own personal experience is anything to go off of, the extent to which this pandemic is encouraging my worst impulses with regard to like being a shut-in is just not good. And I can't imagine that, like, I mean, I'll be the first to admit that I blaze it to fall asleep periodically, but I don't go through life high. I feel like being high indoors all the time with this pandemic would be kind of like being in brain prison. And I really don't think I would enjoy it. But then again, also, because I didn't smoke weed for so long, I legitimately, signed my ROTC contract and I quit weed and I didn't smoke weed again for 10 years. I definitely felt as though weed got stronger in the 10 years that elapsed. And so what used to be like, take a hit of swag or some mids and feel a little bit buzzed and genuinely, a little warm, is a lot different versus, take a hit off of some kind of nightmare fucking, intensely purified California strain that just like rockets you to Dimension X. I try to smoke a joint the way I used to when I was in high school, and I take, 2 puffs pass, take 2 puffs pass again, and then all of a sudden I'm like, I'm in Dracula's castle, and like I can't exit for 8 hours.
I saw somebody filling what looked like one of those balloons that has the rubber band on it that you can bounce off of your hand, but like filling that with weed. And I'm just like, what's wrong with you people? What's happening? Like, I don't even want to smoke weed anymore. They done ruined it. Damn kids these days. They ruined weed smoking.
I think the thing for me that's so funny though is, personally, I remember hearing stories about this, that people in the Netherlands, like it was a really big thing, and maybe still is, to smoke joints that are, weed crumbled up in tobacco, because the weed in the Netherlands has been so strong for so long that obviously if you rolled a whole joint of the kind of stuff you can buy in a coffee shop in Amsterdam, you can get fucking rocked. So, obviously, the solution to that would be pack a small bowl or something like that, or, like some other device, something to smoke a small amount. But if you're going to roll a joint and smoke it like a cigarette, it's got to be mostly tobacco. So, that phenomenon's already been around. Like, okay, you make weed really, really good, but then it's so strong that, like, if you just smoke it the way you would smoke, mids or swag, what we had in Indiana when I was in high school, you got to compensate for that. But the thing that really blows my mind is like dabs and shatter and stuff, like the super concentrated things, because if you've gotten to the point where this like incredibly dank nugs ground up and smoked in a joint, like that's not enough to get you high. You've also got to put fucking like resin in that shit, like the hash blunts things where like they dip it in, and there's all sorts of things. Like you can dip stuff in shatter, you can grind the stuff up or break it up and put it in a joint. Like I've seen people smoking on a rig where they use like an acetylene torch, or not acetylene, but like a butane torch, and it's just burning concentrate. Like, to me, when you get to the freebasing weed stage, I feel like the fun that I used to have, say when I was like 17, 18, and my friends and I would be like, when the teacher wasn't looking, like Googling or, Alta Vista image searching pictures of weed, like that level of high is child's play compared to dabs and shatter and shit like that, and like wax and whatever. And so, don't get me wrong, I enjoy getting high, but that is just a whole new level. And I don't think my fragile worm-infested brain could handle it.
Yeah, I just like regular weed. If I smoked enough of it back in the day, you'd feel like you were gonna fall through a floor.
Shit, dude.
Anything else now, like there's absolutely no way I'd be able to like like deal with, like, I'm scared of weed. I'm scared of like coming out and being like, and then somebody being like, oh, I've got, you know, do you want this joint? I'm like, will I die? Is it going to kill me? Is it, if I take a puff off of this, am I going to be like held onto my couch by a bunch of hands, like in like Sigourney Weaver in Ghostbusters when all those hands come out and grab her? Like, is that going to be me? Except instead of going and becoming, you know, part of the Gozer the Gozerian, I just like watch, you know, all of The Office in one night.
I mean, that's the thing, isn't it? Like, when back in the day, I mean, I imagine Missouri is similar to Indiana in this regard. Obviously, if you're going to get weed, the stronger the better, because chances are good you're going to be smoking with your friends at some point, and chances are good that, like, you know, a lot of the weed that you would get looks like that tweet that was getting passed around about like High Times 1977 feature on the top strains. Every single one of them looks like they've been shit out by a cat. But that's the thing. You stronger is better, right? But at a certain point, it's like coffee, right? Stronger is better in the sense that you want coffee to taste like coffee. You don't want it to taste like dishwater. But if you really cross over that threshold, coffee starts to become like headache seizure juice, and you don't want that. You don't want it to be that strong. You know, you don't want coffee to just be ground up fucking no-dos mixed in with already strong coffee. Like, that's too much. And I feel the same way about weed. That I remember in high school, a good friend of mine, he knew a guy whose brother, if I remember the story correctly, had a connection for what he was referring to as BC bud. Now, I don't know if this was actually British Columbia weed, but at the time, you know, British Columbia weed was by far the best. I mean, that I remember. I feel like California has, now that it's legal, and certainly once California legalized medicinal, it's like surpassed in the sense that, like, once you had an economy that big, sort of dedicated to growing weed, like, you were going to get better stuff. And we rolled a piece of it thinking like, oh, haha, whatever, like, it's still weed. Like, we can, you know, we were used to smoking. And holy shit, smoking a whole joint of that. I remember I was high the next morning. Like, that was the thing. Like, I probably smoked at like 9 or 10 o'clock at night in my front yard with my friend, which now I think about it, I'm like, God, I was so fucking stupid. I cannot believe I was that stupid about smoking weed. Like, just openly like that in, you know, fucking police state of Carmel, Indiana. But I was high the next morning. I woke up at like 10 in the morning and I was still high. And that was like, woo, that's a lot. Like, I don't know if I want to go any further. I think the stuff that I smoke now would be considered mids by American weed standards. That's the thing that makes it so freaky.
Yeah, it's like alcohol, right? You got a 5% beer and a 40% alcohol, 40% vodka. You can, you know, mix your vodka with something to make it more drinkable. But, like, you don't got to drink Everclear, you know, like, straight from the bottle. And that's just how weed feels to me. So now I keep hearing people talk like, oh, well, you just do edibles. Like, but doesn't that, like, you eat it and then, like, maybe you'll be high in a half hour, but, like, there's no real telling. Like,
but then you'll also get really high, right? And that'll be the one where, like, you find yourself high for 2 days if you eat too much.
Yeah. So it's just, I don't know. Weed is confusing and frightening to me now. And everybody else got to evolve with it, and I didn't. So, like, now I'm going to be, when I get out of the army, I'm going to be walking towards, like, I'm going to get my weed card and go into this, like, place. And like, I don't feel like they're going to make fun of me, but there's also that, like, it's like, I don't want to be treated like a kid. I used to be a pothead, God damn it. Back in my day, you kids these days, you don't know about, you know, buying a bag of brown ditchweed from, you know, behind an IHOP. Like,
I'm just going to say, too, though, I think the best thing to go about it, as hilarious as it sounds, because obviously you don't want to, like, have high barrier to entry and stuff. But I think the best thing you can do is when you do get out of the army and you do buy weed, if you're buying, like, bud or flowers or whatever, is get, like, a pipe cleaning tool or something with a small spoon or something that you could use to, like, measure out and just, like, grind some and then measure it out, like, how much you're putting in a bowl. Obviously, don't, like, try to eyeball it the first time. And just, if it's too much, then you know how much you started with and you can kind of reduce it. And I would just use like a, you know, either a pipe or like a water pipe or something like a bubbler or something that's you're not obligated. You don't feel as though you have to, like, keep taking hits off it. Like, you know, you've rolled a joint and then all of a sudden you're obligated to smoke this whole fucking joint. And I mean, I suppose you could do the same thing with a vape. And people might recommend, fans of the show, listeners, if you have recommendations on Francis smoking out for the first time in 20 years, please let us know. My thought is that if you were going something like a hash oil or some kind of like a concentrates thing in a vape, you would just want to make sure that you're not like, because my experience with those is that they do take a little while to kick in. And so you don't be like, oh, I don't feel anything. I'm going to take 10 hits of this shit. And then also just fucking on planet X. So I would say, yeah, give yourself the ability to measure how much you're taking, as much as one can. And then obviously, like, if you can go to a dispensary and buy legal weed, maybe don't buy like like the brain fucking whatever strain they've crafted, the 40% THC, like you'll trip balls level of THC.
Well, I mean, mostly what I think I would do is just get CBD, because I use CBD now, and like, the 0.03, the legal amount, but it's not zero, and I use that, and that helps me go to sleep. So I feel like what I would do is just get a CBD tincture that is just like, maybe 4% or something, as my dad chat calls it, dad weed, because you can use it but still like function as a father, but still like feel okay, which is kind of like having 2 beers for me. Like sometimes just like like I don't want to get drunk, but I just want 2 beers and just like my brain relaxes, and then I get, especially in times like this, you need something like that. So the anti-anxiety meds that my doctor gave me just absolutely fried my brain, and I can't take them because they're basically antihistamines. I was like, well, that's not fun at all. That's just, I can just take Benadryl and feel like shit the next day and not go get a prescription. So you got to do something, I guess. Since everything.
Well, I mean, that's it. It's 420. We're going to talk about weed. We're going to talk about blazing it. We're also going to talk about other issues that are related to the respiratory system, namely COVID-19 and the pandemic sweeping the nation, causing people to freak out and protest and blame the Jews for some reason, and many other things. Just complete fucking pandemonium. The Mercers and the DeVosses are at it again. They're pumping money into stupid astroturf campaigns to convince people they need to do Bundy Ranch shit to protest how they should be allowed to get the disease and die. And they're just running around being dumb as hell, doing the most American thing possible.
And that's the thing, like, when we protest, right? When we on the left and we, like, sane, normal people go to protests, you go to protests and you make signs, and, you do the protests and everybody shakes hands and they go home. I don't know what it is about conservative protests where they just lose their fucking minds, man. Like, it's like, it's not enough to like make a sign and everybody shows up and yells for an hour and then goes home. Like, we've got a Navy chief who like made a sign. Like, he went out and he got a sign, right? Like one of those signs you stick in the ground, like a political sign, but it's blank. Like, hand wrote "Land of the Free" on it. Went to a beach in full military uniform. Like, he's retired, but he was like a Navy chief. So he went in his full like dress blues or class A's or whatever the fuck the Navy has. Stuck this sign in the beach and then waded out into the ocean until he was about, knee or thigh deep. And then had somebody take multiple pictures of him like this. And to him, this is proving a point. To me, the point is that he's a fucking idiot. Nobody saw that. I don't know anybody who saw that picture and was just like, wow, that's a real that's a real statement right there. That this man has a commitment to the land of the free by standing in some water, because they opened the beaches in Florida. Like, and that's like, oh, we want the beaches to be open so we can all come and cough on each other and stand in full uniform in the ocean. Like, it's that mix of like, you had an idea, and you had 2 ideas here. You could have either done this where you stood out in the ocean in like maybe some swim trunks that said "Land of the Free" on it. Like, that would have been a little bit more sane. But instead, you took your uniform, your military uniform, dress uniform with your medals and everything on it, and then stood in some seawater, and then had somebody take a picture of you, and then you posted that on the internet. Like, it's mind bending. Like, I get it that all these people are out here running around because, my favorite, the guy who can't fertilize his lawn, and he's doing that, and he's like, oh, come on, I gotta fertilize my lawn. Come on. the lady who is mad that she can't get a haircut. Like the British people are very up their own asses about like the Blitz, right? Like because World War II in America did not World War II did not hit America like it hit England, because England was actually being bombed. England was being rationed. England had a lot of shit going on. At a certain point in time, there was that like, oh shit, might we fall to the Germans? That's always a real possibility. There's never really a possibility for the Americans.
There also was a huge contingent of wealthy British, both liberals and conservatives, who were like, hell yeah, Hitler rules. I can't wait for him to come to England and make everything efficient like Germany. I'm not kidding.
For sure.
A lot of Nazi sympathizers in this.
For sure. And but my point is that at least the British like had actual hardships that they could like reference again.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Like the Americans don't. Like Americans have not had hardship like as a collective. Now, like, groups of people, individuals have had hardships, but like as Americans, 320 million of us, or as you go back in decades, however many millions of us there were, there's never been a collective like, man, everything's really fucked up, and we all need to come together to deal with this. Mostly, it's just I am inconvenienced, and I don't like that, and because I don't think this is real, I'm going to go out and protest. And you get these news stations that go out and they're breathlessly, reporting on these people. And I think like 60 to 75% of Americans polled are just like, no, we need to stay at home until we get testing, until we get a vaccination, until we get something here. And then it never, but for whatever reason, these loudmouth assholes are the ones that, because they're being the loudmouth assholes, obviously, they're the ones who everybody's pointing the cameras to. And then you've got fucking Jesse Kelly, friend of the show, who once said that he would take his AR-15 and hijack an airplane if it meant he had to get his child to Italy for some experimental surgery. Jesse Kelly is a special kind of brain, but had one of those like, oh, we told you people in DC and we told you people in New York that it was going to come to this, that, and now how the tables have turned. And it's like, nobody wants this except for you assholes. And there's no, like, I get, Nate, I get it that people are scared. I get that people don't have money coming in. I understand those things. And personally, I would be more upset at my fucking government that I pay taxes and that's supposed to be able to take care of the populace in situations like this, rather than being like, no, I gotta be able to open up my shop so that I can, die for the big line, man. The big line's got to go up and I'm going to die for it.
I mean, obviously the thing that really surprises me about this is in America, you have this phenomenon where people are like, fuck you, I won't do what you tell me. I'm going to go protest and be as angry as I can because I demand you end the lockdown because, according to one protester in Ohio, the Jews are doing it. In Britain, you have kind of an opposite phenomenon in the sense that you certainly have the people who want to own the libs and such calling for the end to the lockdown. But as opposed to going out and protesting, they are occupying their time by finding new reasons to call the cops on their neighbors for not clapping for the NHS, for having people over, for any sorts of thing. Basically, the emergency lines have had to put out notices saying, please stop calling to snitch on your neighbors. Like, unless it's an absolute emergency, please stop doing this. We don't need to know that your neighbor has gone for 2 runs instead of 1 today. Because legitimately, it's something in the English psyche. And I say the English, not the British, the English psyche, because while there are insane people throughout this normal country, I feel like the level of insanity I'm describing doesn't exist anywhere near the same degree in Wales, Northern Ireland, Scotland, the Channel Islands, the weird islands that Britain owns throughout the world. Maybe on Tristan da Cunha, people in Edinburgh of the Seven Seas are calling the cops on their neighbors, even though there's like 100 people on the whole island and they all know each other. And the only way to get there is by boat. But I don't know. But I'm saying that what I've seen it really seems as though it's completely confined to the just insane brain dimension of English people. So in a way, it's not that different from this. It's just Americans go out and protest in huge trucks to own the libs. Like, I want to die of coronavirus so I can own the libs. You won't make me stay home, Obama. British people are like, I want the government to tell me it's okay to go outside, but in the meantime, I want to call the cops on everyone.
Does the website Nextdoor exist in England?
I think so, but I don't think it has the same level of usage amongst the populace. I could be wrong.
It should. You guys should really get on that, because then your racists just are racist at each other instead of calling the cops on one another.
What I've noticed is that every neighborhood, like, communities seem to have like local Facebook pages, and my neighborhood has a WhatsApp group, and pretty much from what I can tell, a lot of folks are in a similar vein, that WhatsApp is so ubiquitous here that like your neighborhood, your street, your block, maybe even your building might have, if you live in an apartment building, might have like a group WhatsApp. And that's where you get the real brain prions, fucking boomer forward copy paste of
Isn't
stuff.
that just like a chat thing? Like, it's just a big
it's
rolling
basically
chat conversation.
It's like Facebook Messenger with group chats.
Like, I always...
It's pretty easy to share stuff. It's really easy to forward things. But other than that, it's basically like an encrypted version of like, you have the encrypted version of Facebook Messenger you can use, like the blackout one, but WhatsApp is like that by default. It's owned by Facebook, but I remember like 10 years ago when WhatsApp was its own thing. WhatsApp really picked up around countries outside of the United States where Apple was like, Apple products like iPhones, etc., were really expensive, and it was just way cheaper to buy Android phones or other smartphones, because it's an app that you can get on Android or other OSs. It's by data, it's not text message. So like, you can, oftentimes you save money if you have back in those days, you had a limited amount of text messages. You can, back in those days, the only other way to message between countries, for example, for free would have been to use iMessage, but if you don't have an iPhone, then that sucks. And so like, everyone I knew who was Dominican or Puerto Rican or had family in Central or South America, they all had WhatsApp on their phones. And so here, I mean, similarly, Apple products are massively expensive. There's just way more not Apple mobile phone use. And so WhatsApp has like, it's the most, in my opinion, the most prevalent form of like messaging communication here. Like, just about everything I know uses WhatsApp.
Yeah, I know a lot of people, and I have WhatsApp, and I use it to like text with people outside of America. But yeah, I left all of my when we finally sold the other house, I finally was able to leave all my Facebook groups for the other neighborhood, which was sad because they're all crazy and I'm going to miss some of them. But like, also I'm very glad to not have crazy people in my timeline anymore doing racism. So it's, it's a 6 of one, half a dozen of the other, So let's shift gears from the retired dumbasses in the military, standing in water. Let's go to our brand new dumbasses in the military and boot camp. So boot camp has been closed for a while now. Couple weeks where soldiers who were already in boot camp kept going through, but they just kind of stopped taking new recruits, right? And this is where a lot of the worry about calling up like 1 million reserve National Guard IRR soldiers came from. So they're concerned, like, oh, we're going to have to, we're not getting new recruits because of COVID. So basic training, Fort Jackson at least, has said, okay, we're going to be able to start doing this, to start doing basic training again. And I gotta say, the ways that we're doing this, is making me want to scream. But with the military, I understand, it's like you can only do what you can do with what you have. Like, obviously the correct way to do this would be, all right, everybody who's coming through processing is going to do a quick test for COVID. Once we know that you're clear, then you're going to go ahead and go ship off to boot camp. But we don't have those. We don't have quick tests for some insane reason. I don't know why yet. But we don't have these quick tests. So basically, you're going to go to, MEPS and processing, and then just going to sit for 2 weeks. Like they're taking over like hotels and stuff, and they're like, all right, we're just gonna jam all the soldiers in here for 2 weeks. Which I'm sorry, I don't know if anybody knows soldiers or 18, 19-year olds, but you can't just put them in a hotel room and have them sit on their hands for 2 weeks. That's not gonna work. And also, that's just not a good way to fucking to test for this stuff. Is like we're gonna have everybody sit for 2 weeks and see if they end up getting some kind of disease or sickness. But I guess at the same time they got to start doing basic training again, and this is what they came up with, Nate. This is the fucking stupidity, and the only thing that they have available to them, because again, we just can't do we can't figure out how to do testing.
Yeah, which is crazy because every other country on Earth is testing. Now, granted, okay, the UK sucks at it, and they've been promising by the end of April they'll be testing 100,000 people a day. And as far as I understand, they haven't cracked 20,000 a day yet, and there's 10 days left in the month. So don't foresee them meeting that. But then again, why would they? Because the UK government we basically live in a one-party state. You have a bunch of rich assholes who own all the media in this country. It's uniformly right-wing, and basically the Tories are mass murdering people with their terrible, stupid policy. There was a story that just came out that the prime minister skipped all of the emergency meetings about the coronavirus there were 5 of them in a row he missed. They knew this was coming in January. They didn't even start taking it seriously until early March. They fucked up the lockdown. They fucked up everything. Countries around the world had copied the UK's pandemic response that was on the books prior to the 2010 austerity cuts. So basically, Singapore, for example, did the UK's plan and has been very successful with it. The UK can't do its own plan because they basically scrapped everything and sold off. They were at the point where literally they were like, we know this emergency is coming, but the government refuses to put in orders for protective equipment. So all of the UK's manufacturers of protective equipment were continuing to fulfill export orders literally up to the moment of the lockdown, because the government was like, oh, we might need masks, but we can't order any because that's socialism to buy things. And sure enough, we're fucked. And now nurses and doctors are dying in droves because they don't have the protective equipment they need. Even fucking Italy has the protective equipment.
And of course America is like shanghaiing or pirating or whatever, like protective equipment that's supposed to go to other countries, and we're just like, nope, we need it. But also nobody has protective equipment because it's basically getting shunted away from the states up to the federal level. Like here's the thing that is absolutely killing me is that like the Tea Party, which has been all about, individual and state and, rights and all this shit, are now, because their guy is in charge of federally, are now just like all about authoritarianism and totalitarianism, which, I mean, we all knew that it was never about the Constitution, but this is a real like, oh, mask off on this one about how this is really what this is really about. And it's just that I want to be able to do whatever the fuck I want, which kills me because like Seoul, South Korea, which has a population of like 30 million people, is open.
Well, okay, the metro area of Seoul, which is massive, is about 30 million people. The city of Seoul itself is about 10 million. Okay. But yeah.
Well, I mean, but still 10 million in Seoul, 30 million overall.
It's a huge city. Yeah.
Most of the population is in the Seoul area of South Korea. And they're open. They're people, because they can test, because they're testing everybody. Because you had the government came in, locked everything down, figured shit out, and then started putting out like tests so that everybody. So like the way that you go back to some kind of normality is you have to shut up and listen to what the government is telling you. But that is assuming that you have a government that isn't, don't have their fucking brains inside out, and haven't been laughing or, treating this as nothing. And then suddenly just like, well, I mean, I guess, 300,000 people dying is going to be a good metric. Like we could have none, or we could have very few, but that's just not what we're going to do.
So a funny story, a journalist friend and potential future guest I'm hoping to get on the show, Vincent Bevins, who's written a book about the way in which the CIA and the U.S. government used its proxies to just wholesale murder leftists across the developing world in the 60s and 70s. He lives in Brazil, or he's currently in Brazil. He's reported from Brazil a ton, and he happened to get stuck in Sao Paulo when the lockdown happened. There is a state in the northern part of Brazil, the northwestern part of Brazil. I can't remember how to pronounce it correctly, so I won't even try. Shouts out to the person who roasted my Hungarian pronunciation as being literally unintelligible when I tried to say the name of a city once. But that state is run by the Brazilian Communist Party. Like their local federal elections, whatever, the Communist Party were the largest vote share winners, and they're I think it's the I don't know what the role is, but basically the senior minister for the Communist Party in that state managed to score like 500,000 masks and a bunch of ventilators from China. How did he do this? By basically routing the entire order through Ethiopia so it wouldn't come up. The flights wouldn't have to go through the United States, and they wouldn't fly via Sao Paulo or Brasilia or Rio de Janeiro. They legitimately got a charter flight, flew it from the manufacturer in China to Ethiopia, repackaged it, and did a direct charter flight from Ethiopia to that part of Brazil, like their regional airport, to get it. Because had it gone through like the bigger airports in Brazil, or certainly had it stopped over in America, it all would have been seized and just taken for Donald Trump to like give to fucking, retirement communities in Florida. And it's like, you're at the point where this is indistinguishable from like some kind of shit that would have been in the fucking Soviet Union. Like, but at least in the Soviet Union, they had guaranteed housing and healthcare. Right. Like, it's just shocking.
It wasn't great, but it was there. I mean,
it was there. Fuck. I mean, yeah, basically we the running joke remains that we live in the real life version of all of the propagandists' depictions of the Soviet Union in the 70s and the 80s. Like, we live in a permanent state of stagnating Brezhnev Soviet Union, but it's way more expensive.
Yeah. It's, I don't know. I just like, I understand that people are scared, and I really, like, as I said a while back, I don't think that America would come together against this unseen whatever until like 10 million of us died of it. Like, you got to have big numbers die of it quickly for everybody to be like, oh, we got to take this serious. Because all these people that want to go and fertilize their lawn, they're not affected by it. They don't, they're watching the news and they're like, well, I mean, my hospital seems fine, and nobody in my life.
They're like, people might be dying in New York City, but I just want to grill for God's sake.
There's no reason why I shouldn't be able to do these things. And I mean, yesterday my neighbors were having a big party with all kinds of people. Kind of like, just apparently people are going to do whatever the fuck they want, regardless, like whether or not there's some kind of government mandate or anything like that. So just, I don't know, do whatever the fuck you want. You know what? At some point in time, if these if lockdown things don't ease up, people are just going to start like opening up wildcat salons and shit, and just be like, throw up a tent and do haircuts until the cops come and chase them away or something. But unfortunately, what's actually going to happen is that all these little states are going to start opening up. Well, we're going to do, the red ones are going to start opening. I mean, the beaches are already open in like Florida and shit.
Florida and South Carolina,
it's like, well, I mean, like, and at this point, like, I try not to be an accelerationist or black-pilled, but like, really, I am an accelerationist about this. Like, all the churches that are like, we want to go to church on Easter, is like, fucking fine, just do it. Just, I don't care anymore. Like, it is better for the entirety of this country if you would shut the fuck up and listen. And just for once, not think about yourself and think about the greater good of, your fellow man. But you're not going to do that. So it is kind of a like Boris Johnson, well, we just have to, stiff upper lip this and, plow through, and we'll all just get the disease and move on to the other side. And it's like, essentially that's what we're going to do anyway. So let's go ahead and get started on it, because we as a populace, and Americans and the British, and people like any country that isn't, like New Zealand is just like, no, we're locked down and we're not doing shit and we're taking care of people. And then you got Sweden, who did nothing, and like their COVID-19 numbers are off the fucking charts. It's like, all right, let's just do it. Let's just plow through it, because like, obviously, to get on the other side of this, all of our grandparents have to die. And that's what you want. And the thing is that I know that in general, Americans don't want that. But for some reason, we're going to listen to a bunch of vocal assholes because they're vocal, because they're voters, because, Republicans, Democrats can do the right thing, but don't have the balls to do it. And Republicans don't have the balls to do the right thing. And you're just stuck at a crossroad there where it's just like, I guess it is going to be better if we just kill off a percentage of the population and move on, and not learn anything, because that's what's going to happen. I hate to say it. I hate to be the one to make this realization, but that is absolutely going to be what's going to happen, because we're not, you can look at the pandemic, the secondary numbers when, you ease things off from, 1918, and all of a sudden everything jumped back up again because everybody's like, I want to go to whatever people did for fun in the 1918s. They all left their houses. They all went out. They, decided to stop wearing masks and stuff. And then, the pandemic started happening again. They're like, well, you guys got to put the mask back on. And then you have the anti-mask league. Like, I read this thread yesterday about all of these, like, in 1918, and that's why it was even worse the second time around. It's like, we're just going to do that again because we have no ability to learn anything from our history. Like, something we could have gone through this 10 years ago and we'd still be making the same fucking mistakes because we are, as a populace, fucking stupid. So I don't know. I'm, again, trying not to be black-pilled about it. And as somebody who works from home and my wife works from home, it's very easy and privileged for me to say those things. And I am certainly not advocating for them. I am just seeing what's about to happen. So where, I was at a nursery yesterday, buying plants and cow manure, and like a third of the people there had masks on. It's like, and just all, hanging out, talking plants. Like, get the fuck away from, what? Fine. Fuck it. Everybody, I might die because I had to go pick up fucking composted cow manure. Thanks, everybody.
I mean, I think the thing that gets me about it more than anything else is just that this problem requires Americans to, for once in the modern history of our country, delay gratification for what you might describe as the common good, in the sense that here you have a situation where if you are privileged, if you are in a position where your only problem is boredom, then all you have to do is shut the fuck up and wait. That's it, for once in your goddamn life. Now, lots of Americans don't have that luxury. Most Americans don't have that luxury. There was an estimate that something like 45 to 50% of Los Angeles County might be out of work right now because of how much the people's lives depend on industries that have had to shut down because they're not essential. So you've got a huge problem in America where until they can get a handle on the epidemic, lots of folks can't work and the government's not going to do shit to bail them out. They'll bail out, fucking oil companies because of the price crash that's happening right now before they'll actually legitimately bail out Americans the way that, for example, the Canadians have to some extent, the Germans have for like freelancers, countries like New Zealand have as well. So we've got a problem. There are people who need to work. Don't get me wrong. The government needs to step in and do something about it. The $1,200 checks are not enough. It's a laughable amount. It should be, if it's $1,200 a month for the foreseeable future, great, but it's not. That's the thing. So we have a problem that needs to be solved. So in that regard, I understand why some people might be like, hey, this needs to end. But these people that are protesting this shit, and there's this whole kind of notion that we're going to refuse to take it seriously. What I don't think people realize is what you were just talking about, Francis, is that even if things drop off and you say, well, I live in, Dick Suck Factory County, Kentucky, and there's no cases here, so why should I have to stay home? Well, for one, are they testing? For another, you have zero idea if that's true or not because so many people are asymptomatic and still transmitting the virus. And for a third thing, even if that's true, if we prematurely jump back to full open everything in the economy, nothing is going to stop this disease from coming back. There is no vaccine yet. There probably won't be a vaccine until the end of 2021. So all we can do is make the best of the situation, and the government needs to step in to help people so they can stay home. But because of our fucking shitty constitution, because it was written by a bunch of slave-honing idiots with powdered wigs and fucking mercury addiction, our government is predisposed towards favoring right-wing parties from right-wing rural states or states with smaller urban populations. Never mind the massive history of fucking aggressive voter disenfranchisement of everyone who isn't white and wealthy. And you have a situation in which, politicians are like, oh, we can't make the unemployment benefits, or we can't make the bailouts for taxpayers, too generous because it'll disincentivize work. It's like, you want to disincentivize work, you stupid fucks. That's the point. You can't work without making it worse. You can't work without prolonging and exacerbating the problem. So in this case, for once in your goddamn stupid fucking life, you actually want the government to pay people to not work because it's the only way to solve this problem and to mitigate it. And like, all they can think of is like, oh, well, Austrian economics and Ronald Reagan wouldn't want this. It's like, shut the fuck up. No one cares. And that's the thing that shocks me so much about this, is that the best way I can describe it is this is like an entire nation or an entire class of people, white brain dead boomers and like boomers of the mind who have only ever been able to conceive of fire as a thing that you put out with water. And all of a sudden they're faced with a grease fire or an oil fire. And they're like, fucking spray water on that shit. And they can't stop. They cannot stop spraying water on it. Just like fucking singing Proud to Be an American and spraying water on the fire and making it worse. Because if you don't spray water on fires, then you're a lib and you're not patriotic and you're a communist and you're Jewish, apparently. I don't know why. And it just keeps making it worse. And they're just like, fucking lib, I'm spraying water on this shit. And they're just going to keep on doing that. And it boggles the mind because everyone, not even like the technocrat sort of, educated, et cetera, people, like even people who aren't part of the professional managerial class, as long as their brains haven't been curdled into a fucking, weird spoiled fish broth, they can see that this is not the right way to approach a problem like this. And yet, there's enough folks who are going to fall hook, line, and sinker for the dumb Mercer DeVos, dark arts, fucking guy from Blackwater, Eric Prince shit of trying to spin up these protests and basically do the Tea Party, but for dying.
Yeah. The only arguments, there's only two arguments you have for going back to work. And one is that COVID-19 doesn't exist, which is some incredible brainworms for that one. And the second one is, it's not killing that many people, so we shouldn't be concerned about it. And like, that's it. There's no other way that you can approach something like a pandemic. It's either I don't believe that it exists, or I probably won't die, so it's fine. And either one of those, you can get fucking into the catapult and yeeted into the fucking sun for all I care.
I just laugh about it too, because it's imagine being faced with something that is so obviously racking the world. Everywhere across the planet, people are dealing with this, and you have in real time the ability to cross-check the efficacy of different responses from different countries, whether it's countries that have done very poorly, like the United Kingdom or Italy or Spain, or countries like South Korea or Singapore that have done quite well, and all of this evidence, even just the numbers, like you can't argue with the numbers, even though governments in places like the United Kingdom and China, obviously too, but certainly the United Kingdom, are fudging the numbers heavily by, for example, in the UK, they aren't counting deaths out of the hospital, and they aren't counting deaths of people who died before their COVID test came back positive, which is fucking crazy, but that's what they're doing. Home deaths, for example, are being massively undercounted. But even with that, you can look at it and be like, wow, the UK still is constantly having, 800, 900 deaths a day, hasn't been going down, hasn't peaked. New cases are continuing to grow massively, and you can say, wow, this is not working. Whereas you look at a country like South Korea and say, wow, look at all of these tests. Or look at Germany even. They've done so many tests and their death count is really low. I wonder why that is. Weird how Norway and Sweden have similarly sized populations, and one has gone full herd immunity, the other has locked down, and there isn't a problem. Denmark, locked down, has a similar size population to other Scandinavian countries, albeit a little bit smaller, and they locked down so early and have propped up businesses and workers' wages to the point where not only are people not fucking homeless and not getting evicted and not in debt for this shit, they actually are able to reopen schools and just do, spread children out across classrooms so like they're in smaller sizes, and it's working. And so you have all of this evidence, all this fucking evidence, and yet for some reason all these people can do is just look at it and be like, libs, libs. Like, I don't get it, man.
I think one of my favorite types of conservative is the conservative who thinks that the government is useless and stupid and corrupt and needs to be taken down, but also the government is incredibly cunning and smart and somehow did a controlled demolition of World Trade Center 7 and has, hoodwinked the entire world into believing that that this virus exists so it can take down Donald Trump. And I always just wanted to point to them as like, the CIA tried to kill Fidel Castro with exploding cigars and failed. But yet you think that there's some sort of mastermind that created this thing to take down your boy. I'm sorry. Like, you just need to understand that Donald Trump is just a fucking asshole and stupid. Like, that's okay. You can believe those things. Somehow, though, it's, that juxtaposition of the government is both the biggest shadow, conspiracy in the world, but also couldn't, govern their way out of a wet paper bag. Unless it's the New World Order. Maybe they're the ones that are really in charge. Or as the aforementioned Jewish population somehow.
Yeah, I have to say that it was funny. I mean, in case you're wondering, we were referring to a photo taken in Columbus, Ohio, of a protester in what looks like a shitty 90s minivan holding a sign with the Israeli flag and a rat, but an anthropomorphic rat. So the rat's normal skull shape and nose has been basically rendered into an enormous nose, and it has a separate mouth to look more like a human. It's wearing a kippah, and it has a Star of David or Magen David on it, and it basically says the real plague. And it's like, I'm confused because if you're going to be, I mean, it's weird to me that their first reaction is to blame the Jews without any real logic as to how we are somehow responsible. But then also they're like, you know what? It's not enough to draw a Star of David on a rat. We also have to make the rat have a huge nose. Like, that to me, it's like, he's also got to be wearing a kippah on top of having the Star of David on him, just in case you thought that was a different kind of ceremonial headwear.
It's like right? A Ben.
Rats are often known to wear skull caps. That doesn't mean it has anything to do with Judaism. We have to be really clear here.
It's a Ben Garrison cartoon. We have to label everything. Like, we got to label it Israeli flag, kippah, have an arrow pointing to it, and it just says, crafty Jew or something. And crafty Jew, parentheses, COVID-19.
Yeah, man. I mean, like, it's deep, deep brainworms. And I think the thing about this is that this is revealing the extent to which America is just completely unprepared for anything that requires national cohesiveness. Like, beyond the response, because, I mean, the responses exist, and they vary from state to state, obviously, because of our genius fucking system. But there are responses regardless. Like, to my knowledge, you have not yet had a governor in any American state be like, the libs made this up. It's not real. It's caused by 5G, Allahu Akbar, or whatever the fuck. You know what I mean? Like, that hasn't happened yet. But I think the thing that is becoming clear to me is that the level of control required for an actual coordinated response at the national level doesn't exist in America. And if it were to happen, it would require a lot of these folks to get their shit rocked, like get arrested, get put in jail, or get fucking censored. Like, I hate saying it, but if you've got dark money and Alex Jones shit running around and like laws can't stop them and courts can't stop them, like, you got to fucking find a way to stop them, or you're going to have a problem on your hands. And maybe this idea that things will just sort themselves out in the marketplace of ideas is stupid. Hint, it is fucking stupid. We've known it's stupid for a long time. But I feel like in a situation like this, in which you are going to see a massive worsening of outbreaks amongst these populations, if these protests keep happening in states where people don't believe the virus exists, like, that is a public health emergency. That is a crisis. That is a thing you have to deal with. And I hate to say it, because the fact is, Donald Trump would only use force to repress a group of people like that if they were, minorities standing up for their rights. They're not gonna repress these people. They're encouraging it. He's on Twitter going around saying like liberate Michigan or some shit. I don't know where it's gonna go. It's really weird. And I guess the biggest thing I can say is I understand why Stalin censored people. just saying.
Some of y'all are too dumb to talk, to be honest.
Yep. Yeah. And I mean, and also like the woman who was like, I need to go to the hair salon. That's why I'm protesting. Look at like my gray roots are showing. It's like, bitch, your hair has been gray like that since January. You're just lazy.
And let's be honest, these people love their white roots. So I don't know what she's complaining about.
Yes, fair. So Francis, you did a bonus to talk about boats with an official boat person. Tell us about that.
I talked boats with Rich Madrid. Rich is a former naval officer. We discussed not only the COVID outbreak on the USS Theodore Roosevelt and kind of the differences between the way the Army deals with their commanders and whatnot, and the way that the Navy feels about their captains. And then we also just talked boat stuff because I don't talk to wet soldiers very often. So it's always great to have some Navy people, and sometimes occasionally have a Marine come on and talk about how things are a little bit different, but also the same. So please enjoy this. Let's talk the USS Theodore Roosevelt, because that's what you originally reached out to me to kind of discuss. Now we talked about it on our main the main show that came out last time a show came out. But I wanted to go a little bit more in depth with it because I don't know Navy culture as well, and I also just don't know how the Navy operates versus the Army. Like, if you got soldiers and Marines together, like, we're all ground pounders, so we can kind of like find some common ground. But the Navy is like it's a very different kind of culture. So let's start with the captain. Now I assume you've been following. Everything's been going on with Captain Crozier, right? Is that his name?
Yeah, Crozier, I think.
Crozier, okay.
Yeah. It was kind of weird when it all went down. You know, everything's been kind of abnormal lately with everything with the virus and lockdown. And then it comes out that, you know, you have this captain who they were already in port, I guess, in Guam because they had already had a number of crew members sick. And then he ended up sending a letter to outside of his chain of command and CCing a bunch of people on it that somehow got leaked to, I think, a local paper in San Francisco or something. And then it just kind of spiraled from there.
Now, where do you stand on, you know, this email? Do you think it was a good idea, bad idea? Like, it seems to me like it was a good idea because they weren't getting the support that they needed.
Yeah, I think a younger version of myself would have been kind of like, what's this guy doing? He went outside the chain of command or whatever. But, you know, now that I'm a little bit older and can view things through a different lens, and since I've gotten out and everything, I think he did the right thing. I kind of think that when the investigation comes out, I think we'll find out that he tried to go through his chain of command to basically get the help he needed. And when they said, no, press on with the mission, we've got things to do, because they were steaming around, you know, the South China Sea and things like that. They were one of the main carriers out there, you know, with that forward presence out there, I guess. You know, he said, no, we need to get into port. They went into port, and he sent the letter, and I don't know what else he should have done. Like, I don't think there's anything else he could have done. And then it just came out the other day that, you know, 100 more sailors tested positive on the ship. So you're looking at a ship that, if they would have stayed out, would have been, you know, sailing around with 1,000+ crew members sick, I guess.
Right.
I mean, that's,
and like,
you know,
everybody
you can't do anything that way.
Yeah, everybody infected. I mean, even the captain got infected.
Yeah.
And he was having to deal with that. And these are nuclear powered, and you have to have like a specific. It's not like you can. One of our nuke techs is down. Hey, go get Bobby to come over here. Like, it's very difficult and a long process to become a nuke tech on an aircraft carrier. And these things carry what, like 5,000 sailors? Roughly?
Yeah, about 45 to 5,000 sailors.
All right. So, and that's like all the maintenance people. That's all your pilots and everything. And everybody's just, you know, crammed onto one ship. Like, that's always been the the thing about the thing that keeps me away from being in the Navy is, I don't mind the ocean so much, but it's just the 6 months staring at the same people and the same big blue ocean and doing nothing would drive me fucking out of my mind. So, we all saw the video of the captain leaving and everybody, kind of clapping and cheering. And we also heard the audio of the then acting Secretary of the Navy coming out and calling the captain naive and stupid. And it really seemed like those sailors were really behind their captain, which, and again, this is, as a reservist, I'm not usually on a military base for an extended period of time, but I've never felt any kind of I guess solidarity, if that's the best word to use for it, for the commander of a post or anything. I generally don't even know who the fuck it is, even when deployed. So is this kind of is it more tight knit? Is this more of a you have a really good commander, everybody knows it?
Yeah, even on a carrier, when you have that many people, there are still things that the ship does that the captain gets out and gets around and talks to everyone and makes a point, if they're a good captain, to try to get to talk to everybody in every department. It's a little more difficult on a carrier, and they do set up times for sailors to have one-on-ones with the captain and things like that, especially at the lower or at the smaller commands. I was on a destroyer with 270 sailors, and the ship CO, he knew everybody by their first name. So it's a little abnormal to me to see that level of solidarity with a captain, leaving the ship and everyone chanting his name like that. That kind of tells me that this guy was a little more, I don't want to say intrusive, but maybe more involved in getting to know, the crew that he had with him. And I think that kind of speaks volumes to the leadership that he showed them, or that he gave them. Because in my time, I had about 5 captains on 2 ships, just because of the length of time you spend there versus the time that they're actually on the ship. And I can only recall maybe just one of them where the crew felt that way about the captain. Just because they genuinely go out of their way to make people feel comfortable and make people feel welcomed and things like that. And they do things that do benefit the crew over maybe operational requirements and things like that. I had a CO that would regularly tell his bosses, nope, we're going into this port visit when we were deployed and things like that. This mission can wait and things like that. So it's not unheard of to have that kind of stuff happen and have people feel that affinity toward the captain. But just seeing the video of them chanting his name as he's leaving, it's just kind of put it all in perspective, how much, maybe he did for them.
Sure. And I mean, just also to say, hey, I don't want my sailors to get all fucked up. And now we see that he was
the basic bare minimum level shit there.
Yeah. And now we see that he is and for, as you kind of brought up, you having one commander who, you feel that kind of affinity for. Certainly, I've had commanders that have been really good, and I've had commanders who I've been I am literally just, my back is a stepping stone for you to get your next rank. That's the only reason you're here, is to get another rank, get closer to being a full bird colonel or general, or in your guys' case, admirals. And I would not. There's certainly people I would not cheer for. But also, who wouldn't have done that? Who wouldn't say? Who would say, look, we can't do this. We can't do this mission. If we do this mission, we're not only going to be non-combat effective, we're going to put ourselves and a lot of people in danger, because, I mean, shit, if you have 80-90% of an aircraft carrier go down that is nuke powered and covered in jets and helicopters and just everything that goes into this thing, is weapon systems, all these things, and then you're just look, most of our people are infected. A lot of them are, even if you put 20 or 30% of them down, that's an incredible amount of people that not only aren't working, but you also have to look after. So it's, and it's wild that, I mean, it's not wild as we know this administration, but it is wild that there would be such a push to do a cover up like this. It's And I'm not surprised that they're putting people at risk. I mean, that's the MO of the military, but it is surprising that they would put our missions at risk like this. But again, as we've seen with the Navy before all of this, the Navy can't stop running their boats into each other. So, which is not necessarily like the fault of any one sailor, but it's just an operational tempo that is really fucking up. And then now you have this, and now the Navy's run by the Army. So congratulations. Not that we're gonna fucking do anything better, but at least they put an acting soldier in charge of the Army, or in charge of the Navy, I suppose. We're finally gonna roll you guys into being the Department of the Army. We'll let the Marines stay their own thing, though.
So they're just still bottom tier, anyways. Then.
I mean, look, we can't let them start feeling too good about themselves outside of their own little cult circle. Like the Marines are best. The Marines are like a can of bees. Like, you just want to keep the can angry and shaken, but you don't want to open it. All right, everybody. So as always, thank you. You can get us on Patreon, patreon.com/hellofawayti. That's where you can get all those great bonus episodes. We have levels from $1 up to $15, but they all get you into our Discord, where we've got a rousing group of people that love to talk and hang out. It's a nice mix in there, nice mix of civilian and military in there, and we all just have a good time. So if you want to get involved in that, you can always join up with our Patreon. You can follow me at Army Strang, follow Nate at In These Deserts, follow us on Facebook. You can follow us at Hell of a Way. We also have hellofawaytodie.com, which has writings. There's a store there. There's all kinds of good shit. So we are everywhere that you want to be. Feel free to reach out to either one of us if you have questions, comments, or if you have a possible interview or subject that you'd want to talk about on the show. We're always happy to bring people on and discuss, military stuff, news stuff, anything like that. So as always, Nate, we'll talk to you next week.